sovereignty and territory of every independent state. So be pleased, O God, with our collective efforts as we offer to you our sincere thanksgiving and prayer on this ceremony of the handover of the Balangiga bells. Humbly we beseech you, enlighten us always with your divine wisdom as nations of goodwill, allies in our commitment as partners for peace and prosperity. Empower us with your truth and justice to honor and to defend the principles and values that bind our nations. Sanctify the sacrifices and reward the good deeds of all the people who labored for the fulfillment and realization of this historic occasion, a victory of goodwill, diplomacy, and peace. Forgive all our offenses and recriminations in the past. Heal and unite us with your mercy and love. With sincerity, we implore you, O God, to bestow with your distinct benediction all the honored guests, visitors in attendance, and all witnesses to this historic event. Finally, may the God of life, the God of providence, the God of our history and destiny, bless, protect, and prosper us all in peace, now and forever. Amen.
Everyone may now be seated. At this juncture, may we request the Undersecretary for Civil, Veterans, and Retired Affairs, Yusek Reynaldo B. Mapago, to give his welcome remarks.
Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Delphine N. Lorenzana and his wife, Mrs. Edith Lorenzana, United States Ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Sung Yong Kim, Executive Secretary Salvador Mijaldea, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for South and Southeast Asia, Dr. Joseph H. Felter, Philippine Ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Jose Manuel Romualdez, Secretary Salvador Panelo, Secretary Martin Andanar, members of the Philippine Senate present, Senator Richard Gordon, and Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel Jr. and his wife. May I also acknowledge former Senator Aquilino S. Pimentel Sr., members of the House of Representatives present. We have here Congressman Leopoldo N. Batawil of Pangasinan and Congressman Ben Done of Eastern Samar. Officials of the Department of National Defense, led by Undersecretary Carolina. Officials from other government agencies present. May I also greet Admiral Philip S. Davidson, Commander of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and the members of the U.S. Armed Forces present. May I make special mention of the pilots and crew of the U.S. C-130 Philippine Air Force, U.S. Air Force that brought the bells to Manila. Officers, men and women of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, led by Lieutenant General Galileo Gerard Quintanar, Commanding General, Philippine Air Force, Vice Admiral Robert M. Pedrad, Flag Officer in Command of Philippine Navy, Major General Robert Arevalo, Vice Commander, Philippine Army, and Major General Restituto Badilla Jr. of the General Headquarters, Armed Forces of the Philippines. Residents of Samar, led by Congressman Raul Daza and family. Other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, we shall witness an historic event unfold before our very eyes. As such, it is my honor to welcome you all to Colonel Jesus Villamor Air Base for the handover ceremony of the Balangiga bells from the United States Department of Defense to the Department of National Defense of the Philippines. We are all aware that these 3 Balangiga bells were taken from the town of Balangiga and brought to the United States by American soldiers during the Philippine-American War in 1901. If we briefly go through the history of the efforts that led to today's ceremony, it can be recalled that defense secretaries, historians, legislators, priests, bishops, concerned citizens, and no less than presidents of both countries have made various initiatives to return the bells to the country. Present this morning are the individuals and representatives from the various organizations and agencies who have worked hard over the years to try and bring the bells back home. Let us all give them a round of applause, please. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte once again brought the issue of the bells to the fore in his 2017 State of the Nation address. Finally, after over more than half a century's worth of initiatives, through the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act of 2018, signed by President Donald J. Trump, U.S. Defense Secretary James N. Mattis began the process of returning the Balangiga bells to the Philippines. This was a result of high-level bilateral talks between Secretary Mattis and Secretary of National Defense Delfin N. Lorenzana, following the pronouncement of President Rodrigo Duterte in his 2017 State of the Nation address. The return of the Balangiga bells was made possible through the efforts of both the Filipinos and the Americans. It is but a fitting closure to the very unfortunate chapter of our shared histories as allies, working together to defend our common interests. In a few days' time, the 3 bells will finally return home to their church in Balangiga, Eastern Samar, where it will be welcomed by the people of that town, just in time for the start of the Filipino tradition of Simbang Gabi or Dawn Masses. After 117 years, the sound of the bells will once again ring, not only for the local parish in Balangiga, but for all Filipinos across the globe. Today, the bells are back in Philippine soil, and we are all witnesses to this momentous event. As Defense Secretary Delfin N. Lorenzana receives the bells on behalf of the Department of National Defense from the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Sung Yom Kim. Once again, welcome and God bless us all.
Thank you, sir. May we request everyone to focus your attention on the screen for an audio-visual presentation on the history of the Balangiga bells prepared by the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, National Historical Commission of the Philippines, and the DND Public Affairs Office.
The Balangiga bells have evoked conflicting sentiments among Filipinos and Americans. This is due to an unfortunate incident that happened in the town of Balangiga during the Filipino-American War. But time, as they say, heals all wounds and changes circumstances. Former enemies are now friends. Americans and Filipinos have since become staunch allies, fighting and standing shoulder to shoulder in nearly all wars and battles throughout history. They stood as brothers in the battlefields of Bataan, Corregidor, and the Korean Peninsula, and helped each other in Vietnam and other places across the globe. This ironclad friendship makes both nations stronger in the continuing fight against terrorism and violent extremism, ensuring the security and stability of the Asia-Pacific region. As both nations moved forward, several efforts to return the Balangiga bells were initiated by both sides. In 1958, Father Horacio de la Costa wrote to American military historian Chip Wards seeking help in the return of the bells that were then in the possession of the U.S. Air Force. This request was followed up a year later by American Franciscan priests of Gihulngan Negros Oriental. In 1989, the Balangiga Historical Society, through the National Historical Institute and the Department of Foreign Affairs, petitioned the U.S. government for the return of the town's church bells. The following year, Philippine Defense Secretary Fidel V. Ramos and U.S. Defense Secretary and former Wyoming Congressman Dick Cheney commenced negotiations for the bells' return. When Fidel Ramos became president, he proposed a one original, one replica sharing formula of the bells to appease both Filipino and American sentiments. Over the years, various organizations worked hard for the return of the bells, including the U.S.-Philippine Society based in the United States, led by Henry Howard. The advocacy was shared by several veterans organizations and individuals, Filipinos and Americans alike. The importance of the bells were once again brought to fore by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte during his 2017 State of the Nation address. And so, after more than half a century's worth of initiatives, U.S. President Donald Trump signed the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act of 2018, authorizing Defense Secretary James Mattis to decide on the matter of returning the Balangiga bells to the Philippines. Immediately, bilateral talks between Secretary Mattis and Philippine Secretary of National Defense Delfin Lorenzana followed.
History teaches us that nations with allies thrive. With allies thrive. And it reminds us too, history reminds us that all wars end. In returning the bells of Balangiga to our ally and our friend, the Philippines, we pick up our generation's responsibility to deepen the respect between our peoples, linking the Western people of the great state of Wyoming with people in Eastern Philippines.
Finally, after 117 years, the Balangiga bells, which are important icons of Filipino heritage and identity, are on their way home to Balangiga, where they truly belong. After serving as grim reminders of violence, hatred, and division, the Balangiga bells shall henceforth toll for all humanity as symbols of peace, hope, and friendship.
We shall now proceed to the Handover Ceremony. May we request our honored guests, Secretary Delfin and Lorenzana, and U.S. Ambassador Sung Wai Kim for the inspection of the Balangiga bells downstage. May we also invite Executive Secretary Salvador Merjaldea, Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez, Deputy Assistant Secretary Dr. Joseph Falter, USEC Reynaldo Mapago, and other VVIPs to join in the inspection.
May we request all the principals to please stand behind the bells for the photo opportunity.
We shall now proceed with the signing of Certificate of Transfer and Acceptance. May we request all the principals to please proceed back on stage. The Certificate of Acknowledgement will be signed by Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Delphine N. Lorenzana, and the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Sung Wai Kim.
The certificate formalizes the turnover of the Balangiga bells, fulfilling more than a century's worth of initiatives, acknowledging shared histories and further cementing goodwill, mutual respect, and friendship between the Philippines and the United States of America.
Thank you, sirs. You may now take your seat. At this point, may we request Monsignor Pedro Quitorio to please proceed at the side of the grandstand for the ceremonial tolling of the bell. Likewise, everyone is requested to please stand to give a minute of silence in remembrance of those who perished in this unfortunate event in our history.
Thank you. Please be seated. At this point, may we request the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Ambassador Sung Wai Kim, to give his message.
Magandang hapon. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. It is a tremendous honor for me to be a part of this historic occasion. I'm proud and grateful to be joined by Executive Secretary Maria Dea, Defense Secretary Lorenzana, Ambassador Romualdez, and outstanding leaders of the armed forces of the Philippines. I'm also very happy to see so many distinguished friends, including senators and congresspeople, to witness this historic event. We have two very special guests from the United States who traveled all the way here for this momentous event. Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral Davidson and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Joe Felter. Welcome. We're gathered to welcome the return of the bells of Balangiga to the Philippines people. It has been a long road home. Many Filipinos and Americans worked tirelessly for decades to make today possible. I'm so glad many of them are here today, including my friends Henry, Dennis, and Joe. Since President Ramos first raised the issue of bells with President Clinton in 1993, virtually every Philippine president has pressed for the bells return. As the video we just saw reminds us, President Duterte made a forceful appeal for the bells return during his 2017 State of the Nation address. I was there and heard his passionate call loud and clear. President Duterte followed up with a personal appeal to our Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, who, like all of us here today, recognized that returning the bells is the right thing to do, and that by returning the bells, the U.S. could restore to its friend and ally an important symbol of national independence, and also demonstrate our commitment to a relationship of two sovereign nations, two equal partners, and mutual respect. The bells before us are the original bells that hung in Balangiga, San Lorenzo de Martir Church. The history of these bells spans the entire relationship between the United States and the Philippines. And in the process, they have touched many lives. And their return underscores the enduring friendship between our countries, our shared values, and shared sacrifices. This solemn ceremony reminds us of the many brave Filipinos and Americans who fought for freedom. In 1901, our two countries were adversaries. That painful conflict soon ended, and our countries became partners and friends. We fought together for freedom and to protect democratic values across the Indo-Pacific region. In World War II and in Korea, our soldiers fought, bled, died, and sacrificed side by side. Together, They made possible the peace and prosperity that we enjoy today. I recently had the privilege of awarding the Congressional Gold Medal to 40 brave Filipino veterans of World War II. It was truly inspiring to hear about their courage, commitment, and sacrifice. And thanking them in person was a deeply moving experience for me, and in a sense, an appropriate prelude to today's ceremony. The return of the bells lets us reflect on the U.S.-Philippines relationship, where we have been, where we are, and where we are going. Having now served as over 2 years as U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, I can tell you with great confidence that our relationship remains ironclad, consecrated by the service and sacrifice of Americans and Filipinos who fought side by side. Our shared history is enduring and deeply personal. Our relationship has withstood the tests of history and flourishes today. And every day, our relationship is further strengthened by our unbreakable alliance, robust economic partnership, and deep people-to-people ties. So on behalf of the United States, it is my great honor to be here at this closing of a painful chapter in our history. The bell's return reflects the strong bonds and mutual respect between our two nations and our peoples. It demonstrates our determination to honor the past and the sacrifices made together by Filipinos and Americans. And it heralds our bright future as friends, partners, and allies. The bells of Balangiga are now home in the Philippines where they belong. Secretary Lorenzana, please take them to the people of Balangiga and to the Church of San Lorenzo. May they ring in peace and bear testament to the ties and values which bind our two great nations for generations to come. Thank you very much. Salamat po.
Thank you, sir. The Secretary of National Defense, Secretary Dolphin and Lorenzana, will now give his remarks.
Executive Secretary Salvador Medeldia, Ambassador Song Yong Kim, Dr. Joseph Felter, who accompanied the bell from Cadena Air Force Base to here this morning, Ambassador Raul Rabe and Mrs. Maria Buena Rabe, Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez, our ambassador to the United States, former Senate President Aquilino Nene Pimentel and Mrs. Lourdes Pimentel, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel, and Mrs. Katrina Yu Pimentel, Senator Dick Gordon, Rear Admiral Philip Davidson, Commander of Indo-PACOM, Lieutenant General Galileo Quintanar, Commanding General of the Philippine Air Force, and other AFP officials here, Undersecretary Mapago, the President of the Veterans Federation of the Philippines, Judge Mamaran, is here. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. One cannot imagine the great joy that the return of the Balangiga bells brings to the Filipino people. The Filipinos, especially those from Samar, welcome this occasion. Finally, after 117 years, the bells of Balangiga are coming home, are home actually, and will once again take their place at the Balangiga Church. This is the most memorable day in our nation's history, and we celebrate it with deep gratitude and respect for all those who helped to make this day happen. Now, it was shown in the video presentation that the start was in 1958, but it goes all the way to 1935 by no less than the leader of the band that attacked the Americans in Balangiga, Eugenio Daza. I think he wrote a paper urging our government to request the return of the bells. And he is represented by his great-grandson here. Roy, where are you? Yeah. Eugenio Roy Daza, the grandson of... and we also have here Congressman Raul Daza of Samar, I think the great nephew of Eugenio Daza. So when I was in the United States, I saw a lot of people who work for the bells, and some of them are here. Let me recognize Dennis Wright, Brian Bosell, was there, and this is a triumvirate actually. Brian, Dennis, and Dan McKinnon, who served in the Philippines as a young lieutenant, young ensign, work hard for this. And also here is Bing Brannigan, one of the columnists of Manila Mail, who's been writing about the bells. Or of course, the person who made the most, or who give the most effort, is Henry Howard here. Please stand up, Henry. He was the one who lobbied for the inclusion of the return of the bells in the 2018 NDAA. And he also spent for the transportation of the bells from Wyoming to Philadelphia, and also for the refurbishment. Thank you very much, Henry. How these bells ended up in the F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming and in South Korea after the 1901 event has become common knowledge and readily accessible in the internet. Therefore, there is no need to belabor or to argue who was wrong and who was right. But it is safe to say that these bells have come to symbolize a painful episode in the history of both the Philippines and the United States. How could mere 3 bells, South Church bells, evoke so much intense emotion among Filipinos and Americans? Maybe because we human beings live by symbols such as our national flag, and in this instance, these bells. It is a symbol of our unity, of our identity, and of ourselves. These bells came to symbolize something precious and important to both sides. They symbolize the courage and patriotism of the soldiers whose acts they would like to perpetuate with these bells. And now they are home. And they are going back to where they belong. It's time for healing. It is time for closure. It is time to look ahead as two nations should, with shared history and as allies. When Secretary Jim Mattis and several others, including Henry Howard and Joe Filter, went to Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming to get the bells, he delivered a beautiful speech, and I am quoting a part of it. He said, "To those who think that we are losing something by returning the bells, please hear me out when I say that the bells mark time, but courage is timeless. It does not fade in history in dimly lit corridors, nor is it forgotten in the history of conflict." End of quote. I understand that replicas of the bells were forged, and these replicas will be brought back to F.E. Warren Air Force Base and Camp Red Cloud in South Korea to serve as memorials. Once these originals in front of us and the replicas reach their destinations, it is our hope that closure would have been achieved. It is our hope that they will no longer remind us of that painful episode of our joint history. Instead, let them serve as memorials to those soldiers who fought valiantly for their country. The bells of Balangiga will once again peal. They will still remind the people of Balangiga of what happened in their town square more than a century ago. But they would also look at that history with more understanding and acceptance. These peals will be of joy, revelry, and remembrance, of shared histories and ideals, of new beginnings, of renewed friendships, and a stronger bond of two nations who have surmounted past challenges together, and together are ready to face the future. Let the bells toll strong and loud for our countries. God bless the Philippines. God bless America. God bless us all. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the handover ceremony of the Balangiga bells. We thank you all for witnessing this momentous event in our history.
Maraming salamat at mabuhay tayong lahat. May we invite our guests to proceed at the MIP Lounge for some refreshments. Thank you.
Admin announcement. The Balangiga bells will be available for public viewing at the Philippine Air Force Museum from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. starting today until December 13, 2018, before it will be transported to Balangiga, Samar.
Ready to conquer new heights. And as we welcome our 71st year, we are determined to boldly face and surpass the challenges that will come along our way for the months to come.
On our 71st year anniversary, the Philippine Air Force rises aggressively with the changing times, constantly evolving, reshaping, and restructuring itself with the acquisition of new aircraft, upgrading equipment, harnessing the Filipinos' natural talents, resilience in the face of adversity, and innate oneness with the sky. The Philippine Air Force has earned its credibility and is gaining new strength and is ready to steer through turbulent skies when it's called upon, and we will prevail.
The recent fighting in Marawi wrought damage to the Islamic city. Dubbed as the game changers of the Marawi conflict, the role of the Philippine Air Force was highlighted in a variety of missions, from close air support, air strike, evacuation of our fallen heroes and the wounded, transport of essential supplies and troops to the battlefield, logistical support, humanitarian assistance to affected civilian population, and various tactical and strategic airlift operations.
With compassion and empathy towards the sufferings of our countrymen, the Philippine Air Force has been active in bayanihan efforts in order to help alleviate the pains of those affected by the war. The 355th Aviation Engineering Wing and the 710th Special Operations Wing have been performing intensified clearing operations as part of the rehabilitation process in Marawi. After the utilization of the capabilities of the FA-50 aircraft during the Marawi crisis,